Welcome back to our channel, Shattered Trust Stories, where we explore the untold stories of relationships, heartbreaks, and the unexpected twists of life. Let's get started. The phone rang at an hour that felt wrong, too early, too late, or maybe just too much of everything that had already happened. I stared at the screen. It was Lisa. My wife. My partner for over a decade. The woman who once promised to never betray me. I should have let it go to voicemail. But for some reason, I picked up. Hello? I answered, my voice flat, betraying none of the storm inside me. John, her voice came through, shaky and unfamiliar. I think it's time we face the reality. I want a divorce. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the blood drain from my face. A divorce. After everything. After all these years, after the house we built, the children we raised, the dreams we shared. But there it was. The word hung in the air between us, thick with finality. You want a divorce? I echoed, trying to keep the shaking out of my voice. You've been thinking about this? There was a pause, long enough that I wondered if she was crying, if she was regretting the decision already. But then she spoke again, her voice more composed, as if the moment of vulnerability had passed. Yes, I want a divorce, Lisa said firmly. But there's no point in talking to me about it. I have a lawyer. You can speak to him. He'll handle everything. I sat there, stunned, trying to process the words that didn't quite make sense. A lawyer. She had already lined up a lawyer? The thought gnawed at me. Had she been planning this for longer than I realized? Had everything between us been a lie? Fine, I said, my voice tight. I'll speak to your lawyer. As the line went dead, I sat there, the weight of the conversation sinking in. The woman I had married, the woman I had trusted with my life, was done with me. I couldn't believe it. But I also knew something wasn't adding up. Divorce? Just like that? It wasn't like her. But then, over the last few months, I had noticed something. Little things, really. Changes in her behavior. Her long nights at work, the strange, offhand comments that didn't feel like her anymore. And then the silence. The way she seemed to pull away, to drift out of my reach. I wasn't naive. Something was going on. I just didn't know what. But I was about to find out. A few hours later, the phone rang again. This time, it was the lawyer. The man she had chosen to fight for her, to represent her in this cold, calculated move. I answered, trying to maintain control. Mr. Walker, the voice on the other end said. I'm Daniel Michaels. I'm representing your wife in her divorce proceedings. I'd like to set up a meeting to go over the details. Let's meet tomorrow, I said, my mind racing with questions I didn't have answers to. Very well, I'll send you the details, the lawyer said, a tone of finality in his voice. It was almost too professional, too detached, like this was all routine for him. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a few moments. Divorce papers. A lawyer. The pieces were falling into place, and none of it felt right. I had to know the truth. I had to understand why she was doing this. The next day came, and I arrived at the lawyer's office early. The building was sleek and modern, as though it was designed to intimidate. It was everything I expected from a high-powered law firm. But what struck me the most was the air of confidence that surrounded it. Everyone here was used to making tough decisions, to cutting people off without a second thought. I didn't belong in this world. But I would soon learn that I had more power than I realized. I sat in the waiting area for what felt like an eternity, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead doing nothing to calm my nerves. Finally, the door opened, and a man in a tailored suit stepped out. He looked at me for a brief moment, sizing me up, before he extended his hand. Mr. Walker, he said, his grip firm. I'm Daniel Michaels. Please, come in. I followed him into his office, my mind racing with questions. Was Lisa already in on this? Was she part of the scheme? Or had she really just decided, out of nowhere, that she wanted a divorce? Either way, I was going to get to the bottom of it. That we sat across from each other, and for the first few minutes, we exchanged pleasantries. He made small talk about the weather, about business, trying to create a sense of normalcy in the air. But I wasn't interested in that. I needed answers. Let's get to it, I said, leaning forward. Why is my wife divorcing me? What's going on here? Daniel Michaels sat back in his chair, his hands folding neatly in front of him, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. It was the smile of someone who knew something you didn't. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about Lisa. It was about something else. Something bigger. Mr. Walker, Michael said, his voice cool and calm, I believe you're here for the truth. And I'll give it to you. But I suggest you brace yourself. My pulse quickened. I could feel the weight of his words hanging in the air, suffocating me. I nodded slowly, waiting for him to continue. Your wife, he said, leaning in slightly, is in a relationship with someone else. And she's been planning this for months. The divorce isn't about you, Mr. Walker. It's about the other man. The man she's been seeing behind your back. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The world around me seemed to blur. This wasn't possible. Lisa had always been loyal, hadn't she? She was the mother of our children, the woman I had built my life with. And now, in a single moment, everything had changed. But Michaels wasn't finished. He continued, his voice low and methodical. The reason she's hired me, Mr. Walker, is because she's been trying to protect herself. From you, and from the truth. She's hoping you'll go quietly, that you'll take the fall without questioning her actions. But I'll be honest with you, there's more going on here than you realize. The words hung in the air, thick with meaning. I was still processing what he had just told me when I noticed something odd. Michaels had been so calm, so composed, but there was a slight tremor in his hand as he reached for a file on his desk. It was subtle, but it was there. Something was off. I leaned forward, my eyes narrowing. What are you not telling me? Michaels froze. For the first time, I saw his confidence crack. His hand trembled again, and he quickly composed himself, but I could see it. He knew something else. Something bigger. Something that could change everything. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said the words that would change the course of my life forever. Your wife's affair, it wasn't with just anyone, Mr. Walker. It was with someone you know. Someone you trust. My heart skipped a beat. A knot formed in my stomach. I wasn't prepared for this. Who? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. Michaels hesitated. He was stalling. But I wasn't going to let him off the hook. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. Who, Daniel? Who is it? And that's when he finally said the name that shattered everything, Greg. Greg. My best friend. The man I had trusted more than anyone. The man I had confided in, shared my triumphs and failures with. The man I had introduced to my wife. It was like a bomb going off in my chest. The betrayal was too much. It was too cruel. My wife, my best friend. The two people I trusted most in the world, together, behind my back, for months, and that was when I knew. This was no longer about a divorce. It was about revenge. I stood up abruptly, knocking my chair back in the process. My mind was spinning, 1,000 thoughts crashing through my head. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't just walk away and let them destroy me. I turned toward the door, my fists clenched. I had been played. But now, it was my turn to make them pay. I left Daniel Michael's office in a daze. The words, Greg, and affair echoed in my head like a drumbeat, drowning out everything else. My world, the life I had carefully built with Lisa, was crumbling. It wasn't just the divorce. It wasn't just the fact that she had betrayed me. It was that the one person I thought I could trust, the one person who had always been by my side, the man I had shared every victory and defeat with, was the one who had stabbed me in the back, Greg. My best friend. The man I had thought of as a brother. I gripped the steering wheel of my car, knuckles white from the pressure. I had to process this, to figure out my next move. The anger burned in my chest, but beneath it was a cold, calculating clarity. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let them destroy me like this. I pulled over to the side of the road, fighting the urge to scream. This wasn't just about a cheating wife anymore. This was about something deeper. Something more personal. This was about justice. This was about making them understand the depth of their betrayal. I couldn't do it alone, though. I needed help. I needed someone who could help me navigate the maze of lies they had woven around me. But more importantly, I needed to find out everything. I needed to know everything about the affair, about Greg's involvement. I couldn't take any more secrets. I called my attorney, a sharp and no-nonsense woman named Rachel. She had helped me with business dealings in the past, but now, I needed her for something much more personal. Rachel, it's John, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I could feel the rage bubbling beneath the surface. I need you to dig into Greg. I need everything you can find. His finances, his emails, his phone records, whatever you can get. I need to know who he's been talking to, what he's been doing, every detail. And I need it fast. There was a brief silence on the other end. Rachel knew me well enough to understand the gravity of my request. I'll get on it right away. But I'll need time. I'll need access to his accounts, and I'll have to be discreet. You know how these things work. I don't care about discretion, Rachel. I want to know everything. I want to see how deep this goes. Understood. I'll have my team start immediately, she replied. But you need to stay calm, John. You can't let your emotions dictate your actions. I didn't answer right away. Rachel's words hit home, but they didn't change the fact that I was furious. I was losing everything, and now, to add insult to injury, the man who had always been my right hand was the one who had been tearing my life apart from the shadows. As the hours passed, I found myself pacing around the house, unable to sit still. I had gone through the motions of trying to pack up some of my things, thinking about what I would need for the next few weeks, but nothing felt real anymore. Every item in the house felt like a reminder of the lies. The wedding photos, the family pictures, the little trinkets Lisa and I had picked up on vacations. It all felt like a facade. Then, just as I was about to collapse onto the couch, the phone rang again. It was Rachel. "I've got some information for you," she said, her voice sharp. "It's not good." I sat up, my heart racing. "What did you find?" "I've accessed some of Greg's financial records." "It's bad, John. Worse than we thought. He's been moving money around, large sums, untraceable. It looks like he's been laundering money for years, but there's more. I've found some of his personal emails. It seems like he's been making plans with someone else. Not just Lisa. There's a third party involved." I leaned forward, gripping the phone tightly. "Who?" "I'm still trying to piece it together, but it looks like Greg has been in business with someone in real estate, someone who has been using him for inside information. He's been giving them tips about market trends, inside deals, basically selling out the business you built together." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Not only had Greg betrayed me with my wife, but he had been undermining me professionally as well. He had been using me for his own gain, selling out everything we had worked for. I didn't know what hurt more, the personal betrayal or the professional one. Rachel, I need everything you've got. I want to expose him. I want everyone to know what he's done to me. I'll get it to you as soon as possible. But John, you need to be careful. This is bigger than just a personal betrayal. If Greg has been laundering money, there are people involved who won't be happy if they get caught. I don't care, I said through gritted teeth. I'll burn everything down if I have to. I'll make sure Greg never works in this city again. I hung up, my heart pounding. But as soon as I did, I realized something. I was done being the victim. Done being the man who had everything taken from him. It was time for me to take control. Time for me to be the one who held the power. The next few days were a blur of legal meetings, phone calls, and gathering evidence. Rachel was doing her part, digging deeper into Greg's financials, while I focused on getting everything in place to confront them both. But there was one thing I knew I had to do: confront Lisa. I couldn't let this go on any longer. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal, it all had to end. And I would be the one to end it. That I arranged to meet her at a small cafe, the kind of place we used to go when we wanted to get away from the world. I had picked it because I knew it was neutral ground. No one would expect anything big to happen there. But I wasn't going in there to talk about reconciliation. I wasn't even going in there to discuss the divorce. That I was going in there to make sure she understood the depth of the mistake she had made. When she walked in, her face was a picture of confusion, as if she hadn't expected me to call her so soon. She had probably thought I would wait for the legal process to unfold, that I would play the part of the broken husband, silently suffering. But I wasn't going to be that man. Lisa, I said, my voice cold, more controlled than I had felt in days, I know everything. Her eyes widened, a flash of panic crossing her face. What do you mean, John? I know about the affair. I know about Greg. I know about everything. The lies, the money, the games. You've been playing me like a fool. She took a step back, looking around nervously, as if she were hoping someone might come to her rescue. But she was alone. And she knew it. John, please. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said, her voice pleading. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me. Don't try to justify it, I shot back. You made your choice. You've been lying to me for months. And now you're going to pay for it. Her face turned pale, and I could see the fear creeping into her eyes. But I wasn't done. I've got everything, Lisa. I've got the proof. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. And I'm going to make sure you and Greg never work again. Her lips quivered as if she wanted to say something, but the words never came. She just stood there, silent, broken, as I delivered the final blow. This is your last chance, Lisa, I said, my voice low, menacing. You can either face the truth, or I can bury you both. It's up to you. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, the weight of her own actions crashing down around her. As I left the cafe, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The plan was falling into place. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real game hadn't even started yet. Greg and Lisa had no idea what was coming. But they would soon learn that you don't mess with me. And when you betray someone like this, there's always a price to pay. That brings us to the moment where John's pursuit of justice takes a dark turn. The stage is set for his ultimate revenge, with all the lies and betrayal exposed for the world to see. If you'd like, I can continue the saga further, exploring the aftermath and the consequences of John's actions, or focus on how he exacts his revenge on Greg and Lisa. The days following my confrontation with Lisa felt like an endless march toward an inevitable collision. I could feel the tension in every fiber of my being, each passing hour weighing heavier on me. The world around me had become a twisted game of strategy, with Lisa and Greg on one side and me on the other. The stakes had never been higher. Rachel was working tirelessly to gather all the evidence I needed. Every email, every financial transaction, every document that linked Greg to the web of corruption and deceit he had built around me. I had to wait for it all to come together. But the patience it required was grating against me. I was like a hunter waiting for the perfect moment to strike, but the prey was so close, and yet so far away. It was 2 days after my meeting with Lisa when Rachel called again. This time, her voice was different. It was colder, sharper. "John," she said, her tone tight, "I've got everything you need. I've got the proof that Greg's been laundering money, that he's been selling your inside real estate tips to competitors. And I've found something else, something that will break them both." My heart raced as I listened. "What is it?" Rachel hesitated, and I could feel the gravity of her words before she even spoke them. "I found a set of emails between Greg and a man named Victor Langley. He's a big player in the real estate market, but that's not the worst part. Greg and Langley have been collaborating on a deal for a new luxury development. They were planning to cut you out entirely. They were going to use your name, your reputation, and take the deal for themselves." I gripped the phone, my knuckles turning white. So, they were using me. All this time, I was nothing but a stepping stone for them to climb higher. "Exactly," Rachel said. "And here's the kicker, in those same emails, I found something that links Langley directly to Lisa. They've been working together for years, using Greg as a pawn in their game. She was in on it all along." I sat back, stunned. The betrayal went deeper than I could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about Greg. It wasn't just about Lisa. It was a full-on conspiracy. Lisa had been orchestrating it from the shadows, manipulating both Greg and me for her own gain. She wanted out of the marriage, sure, but she also wanted a slice of the pie. She wanted power, control, and wealth, and she was willing to burn everything down to get it. "I need to see everything," I said, my voice calm but full of resolve. "I need those emails. I need the financial records. I want to make sure I've got all the ammunition before I go after them." "I'm sending everything to you now," Rachel replied. "But, John, you need to be careful. This is bigger than just Greg and Lisa. Victor Langley is not someone you want to go up against. He's dangerous, and he has connections that could hurt you." "I don't care," I said through gritted teeth. "I'll take down everyone who's had a hand in destroying me. No one is safe." As soon as I hung up the phone, I began to sift through the documents Rachel had sent me. My eyes scanned through the mountains of data, emails, wire transfers, legal documents. The evidence was irrefutable. It wasn't just Greg's betrayal. It wasn't just Lisa's lies. It was a web of corruption and greed that stretched further than I ever could have imagined. I took a deep breath, my fingers trembling slightly as I read over the final email, the one that sealed their fate. It was from Lisa to Victor Langley, detailing how they planned to cut me out of the lucrative deals I had worked so hard to build. The email ended with one chilling line: "John is just a pawn. He doesn't realize it yet, but soon, he will be nothing more than a casualty of our success." The words burned into my mind. Nothing more than a casualty of our success. That I looked at the time, just past midnight. I could feel the anger coursing through my veins, but it wasn't just rage. It was strategy. It was the calm before the storm. I was done being the victim. Done being the fool. It was time to turn the tables. The next day, I made my first move. I knew I had to confront Greg before I went to Lisa again. He was the key to everything, the one who had sold me out, the one who had allowed himself to be manipulated. He needed to understand that there was no escape from the hole he had dug himself into. I had a feeling that once he realized the full extent of what I knew, he would break. And I needed him to break. I called him and arranged to meet at a secluded spot near his office, a place where we could talk without interruptions. I wanted him to be alone, vulnerable, so I could hit him with everything I had. When Greg showed up, he looked confused, his expression unreadable. But I could tell he was nervous. He had to know something was coming, something that would change everything. "You wanted to talk, John?" Greg said, his voice flat, almost dismissive. "Yeah," I replied, my voice cool. "I've got something I want to show you." I handed him a folder, one that contained the emails, the financial records, and everything else I had gathered. Greg's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages, his face going pale. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice rising. "How did you get all of this?" "It doesn't matter how I got it," I said, leaning in, my voice cold and calculating. "What matters is that I have it. And you're going to pay for what you've done." Greg's face twisted with anger, but there was also fear in his eyes. "You don't know what you're doing, John. You think you can just ruin me like this? You have no idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I said. "You're a traitor. You've been using me, using my trust, my business to line your pockets. And Lisa? She's been orchestrating it all. She's been playing you and me like puppets. But it ends now." Greg took a step back, his voice trembling. "You don't understand, John. You think this is about money? You think this is about real estate? No, this is about survival. Victor Langley is not someone you can just walk away from. If you go after me, if you expose what we've done, he'll destroy you. He'll destroy everything you've built. He'll make sure you never work again." I smiled, a slow, menacing grin that sent a chill down Greg's spine. "Then I guess we'll see who destroys who." Before he could say anything else, I turned and walked away. But as I left, I knew one thing for sure: Greg had just realized the depth of the mistake he had made. He knew what was coming. And there was no turning back now. The next day, I called Lisa. It was time to finish what I had started. This time, there would be no room for excuses, no more pleading. I would make her understand the cost of betraying me, of betraying everything we had built. But this time, I wasn't just confronting her about the affair. This was bigger. This was about exposing her for who she really was. I arranged to meet her in the same cafe, the place where it all began. When she walked in, her expression was one of guarded curiosity, but I could see the fear lurking beneath the surface. She knew the moment had come. "Lisa," I said, looking her directly in the eye, "I have everything. The emails, the money transfers, the proof that you've been plotting behind my back. I know about the affair with Greg. And I know about your plans with Victor Langley." Her face drained of color as she took a step back. "John, please. I never wanted this to happen. You have to understand, I was just trying to secure our future." "No," I interrupted, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. "You were trying to destroy me. You wanted to take everything from me, my business, my family, my trust. You thought you could use me as a pawn, but you're wrong. You're going to pay for what you've done." She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The realization of what I was about to do was hitting her hard. She knew there was no way out now. "You're finished," I said, standing up, my eyes cold. "I'm going to expose everything. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. And if you try to fight back, I'll make sure Langley goes down with you." Lisa stared at me, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. She knew, deep down, that she had crossed a line that couldn't be undone, and just like that, I had won. The game was over, but there was still one last thing to do. I had to make sure Greg and Lisa paid the price for their betrayal. And that would take everything I had. The pieces were falling into place, and soon, their empire of lies and deceit would come crashing down around them. But this was far from over. This was just the beginning.